So today, like Rick was alluding to, I'm part of the Agile Systems and System Engineering Working Group. There's and Rick has organized and gotten a lot of volunteers to help with a lot of sub-projects, and this particular one actually started a long time ago, back in 2013, almost at the inception. It was actually a request. I'll give you a little bit of that here in a second. And it's about the topic that's listed, is creating a decision guidance of some form to help with the adoption of Agile System Engineering. And so what I'm going to do today is, because it's been going on for a while, I need to give you some, I'd like to give you some background and some context about what the system of decision guidance in this space looks like. And then I want to take you through a little bit of the design in one aspect of that system, called the observation space design. And we've done some evaluation, I'll say light, at least one sample evaluation to try out our method and tools, and I want to walk you through some of the results of that. And then also we have a slide of next steps, and there's a little bit of an invitation included in that next step. So that's kind of the agenda for today. Okay. So again, starting back, this thing started. It was actually a request stated by the INCOSE Corporate Advisory Board, which is made up of almost 100 members of corporate and academic and other society and other professional organizations. It actually ended up in Rick's charter for his working group, and in terms of requesting some form of decision guidance on how to deal with Agile. We ended up conducting 2 sensing sessions. One of them was in a working group. The second was either another working group or a workshop, an international workshop, or one of the symposiums. But we went through 2 of those, and over the course of 2 years, to find out what people really meant when they said they wanted decision guidance. You know, what does it mean? And so, just to give you a little bit of a backdrop, we ended up with 30 or 40 people the first time, and they represented industries everywhere at the table. Were people that were in integrated circuit, microcircuit development, so they had life cycles that were running around 18 months. On the other end of the scale, we had people out of Bechtel who run large construction projects that go 25 plus years, and they do more incremental system construction. They do a big system design, then they do incremental delivery and construction over the course of a long time, and then technology is changing, and they're having to re-engineer what they really thought about over the course of time. So, and everything in between, aerospace companies, whether it's aerospace, a lot of different representatives from the DoD, and even Europe. Okay, so we had a large variation of people we're dealing with. We asked people what they thought about what they meant or what they thought when they heard the word Agile, and we got answers all over the place. Some of it was like, you thought about is software, although most of them said we do not want software Agile. But they had already come to mind of what they thought about with regard to their solution. Some of them just, give me a checklist, okay? Others said, give me a tailored system engineering process that's Agile. And others didn't know what they wanted. They just said, we want, if we need help, we just don't know what the formula is. On top of that, Rick had his throttles going full bore with all of his other small projects. And one of them was the life cycle project that's called the ASE LCM up there. And I mentioned 3 of these because it's important. What's going on is that there's parallel paths of learning going on around this topic. It's been going on with full bore, and actually even started way before that with the fundamentals work that Rick was doing. And so, kind of like that timepiece that's on the right in the picture, you have where you have sort of circle mechanisms within other mechanisms. You have different timelines, different people doing different things. There may be coupling between them, there may not. And so that's what our little group was actually dealing with, as expressed by the Corporate Advisory Board membership. At the end of the day, when we got through a lot of storming and norming like you would expect, we ended up with 4 fundamental values that I wanted to spend a minute on, because this is what guided us as we started making decisions about what the form of this thing was going to look like. Agile is agile. It means you got to, so time of response is a big deal. We wanted to get people headed in the right direction. We didn't want it to turn into a big analytic exercise. So that first value up there is we wanted to be able to help them make directionally correct decisions. At the end of the day, we all like to put our own stamp on stuff, and so we want to be able to make sure they head in the right direction, but after that, it's kind of up to them. We needed something that was going to be suitable to address the wide range of development applications. In other words, our customer base within the INCOSE community. Okay. This is not just aerospace. It's not just defense. It's not energy only. It's not even healthcare just by itself. We got people that span all over the place in different cultures. We needed work products, because we had, by that time, we were starting to get feedback at the cab with regard to products that weren't quite hitting targets. So we wanted to be able to create work products to offer to our customer base that are simple and quick to use. And then, and like I repeated a couple of times, there were multiple paths of learning going on, and somehow we had to keep all that integrated and integrate those ideas as they're coming up and be able to incorporate them as well. So that's what drove us, and you'll see some of that throughout this slide presentation. So we'll just start out here and just the big point here is that the decision guidance that we've come up with, and I want to introduce here today, is really a system. It's got elements of the system, and there's relationships between those elements, and there's actually an organizing framework we put in the back of it. It's not just a checklist. It's not a tailoring guide. None of that. We came to the conclusion that just wasn't going to work on a broad scale. Okay? So what you see over here on the right is a summary of what's a systemogram that kind of walks, I'm going to parse this out so it's much more readable, hopefully. And but basically, this is a systemogram that basically tells the story of what we're doing. And just to quickly walk you through the whole idea that system engineering teams, sooner or later they recognize that they have a performance mismatch problem in the way they're doing development, either with what they've done in the past compared to new development opportunities or requirements they have in the present and the future. Something has got to drive them to want to change. Okay, and that usually kicks off some kind of learning cycle that may be productive or not. And it's that learning cycle that we're saying is really what's going to drive somebody to enter into looking at an agile system engineering decision guidance approach. There are several elements that we're going to talk specifically about. One of them is observational spaces. The other one is what those are. I'll get into each one of these separately. There's a set of inquiry tools we've developed that support looking at what those observation spaces are about, and the findings from those, all that analysis, feeds what we call orientation, which is really analysis and synthesis, which allows a team in the collective to figure out what to do next. And that enters into some kind of a set of activities that are the result of a set of decisions. At the end of the day, you want an actionable set of decisions that you can make to be able to actually do something. Okay? So that's really what this system is all about. Okay? And I'll walk you through that. I mentioned a couple minutes ago that we have an organizing framework, and that organizing framework that we're using is what's called the OODA loop. And OODA, OODA, stands for the 4 activities that are listed on that picture up there called observation, orientation, decision, and action. Think of it as, even though a thing looks like it's sequential from left to right, throw that out of your brain right now and think of it as 4 activities, those 4 activities that I just listed, that have relationships between them that are operating concurrently all the time. That's really what's behind the OODA. And his whole purpose in life is to provide some kind of a guide for action. We adopted this because this is not uncommon in the industry. It's been around since the 70s. It's been applied not only in the DoD, but it's been applied in academia. It's been applied in various industries. Some of the places it's been applied that's useful for system engineering is in the area of cognitive science, adaptive systems, and even data fusion. Okay. So the reason we picked it is because it fit our need for some kind of an organizing framework. I'm not going to talk any more about it. I just want to let you know this is what we chose, and you're going to see it manifest itself throughout the presentation. So let's go through each of those steps. Let's talk about observing first. And really, I've already talked about, how a team actually gets to even want to look at decision guidance. But what's going to happen is, and what we've created is, in the observing activity, we've created and defined 4 observation spaces: the customer problem space, the solution space, the product development space, and the 4th one around the organization learning space. Those top 3 have their roots in a lot of different fields of study, but and Rick does work and the fundamentals around Agile that deals with all 3 of those spaces. But system engineering in general deals with all 3 of those spaces as well. So this is not a foreign to what all of us are experienced. But what I'm going to do is talk about what we're going to do with those spaces as we move forward. At the end of the day, okay, let me make sure everybody understands what we're trying to do here. So, a lot of people are trying to understand a key question and to get the answer to a key question. Should I do Agile? If I do Agile, where should I apply it? And how much Agile do I need? Those are almost the 3 questions that kept coming out repeatedly in our sensing sessions. And when I talk to people at the international workshops and on the phone and others, sooner or later they get down to those 3 things, one way or the other. And so to answer those questions, you got to know where to look and what to look for in order to find out the why you want to even answer it, even get to Agile to begin with. So that's the whole purpose for the observational spaces and the inquiry tools to help look at those things. This is the first part of the story. Okay, the second part of the story is the orienting phase. And like I said on the OODA loop, this is the most important activity in that whole operating framework. This is where the group, the team, the organization, has to get together, look at what has come out of the observation activity, and try and make sense out of it. This is where they bring in other analysis, they bring in their own perspectives, they bring in their own cultures, they bring in their own experiences, and somehow they got to bring all that stuff together to see what the heck can possibly make sense for them to be able to modify their behavior to change in a way that meets any Agile requirements that they're being confronted with. Okay. What comes out of that could be new development scenarios, new processes, or improvements to what they do. But at the end of the day, they need to understand what degree of agility they need and where they ought to be targeting. And that's really it. I talked earlier that we sort of developed 3 tools. There's actually a 4th, but just briefly, there's a thing called the stability predictability grid that allows easy mapping in terms of uncertainty. There's response time requirements graph allows us to look in that dimension, and then there's what we call a response capacity graph to see, how good are we or capable are we of dealing with a large amount of variation. The 4th one down there is the RS. I just call it the RRS group, grid. It's Rick does fundamentals. It's right out of his stuff in terms of reusability, reconfigurability, and scalability. It gets at the whole how at the response capability of the system of interest, whatever that is, whether it's your system solution or the product development system that's developing that system. And those, between those four areas, we feel like it allows a group of people to actually see what the heck is going on and develop a set of requirements to move forward with. The third stage, we haven't done much work here because that's why everything's kind of grayed out, is really in the deciding phase. There are a lot of moving parts here. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but once you sort of figure out where you need to focus on, sooner or later the team or the organization's got to make up their mind what they want to do. Some of those agility improvement decisions, sort of highlighted over here on the right, could end up in new capability development. It should end up in a set of strategy selections that are required for the problem that they're trying to address. And we've sort of created some idea of this based on our own experiences, our own understanding, the readings, and our own knowledge. That we've included two artifacts here, and again, these are ideas. They haven't been worked out yet. The idea of a capability portfolio where we house the memory of the organization, and that memory includes its process capabilities, project control capabilities, what kind of behavior patterns practice at the organizational level, even the product development system architecture patterns that Rick has alluded to in his own fundamental work, and the life cycle capabilities that your organization is capable of. Okay. It's one thing that if you're an organization, I'll just pick on this one for example. If all you've ever done is waterfall development, and all of a sudden you think you want to do evolutionary or spiral, what makes you think your organization is capable of doing it? It's, how do you get from an intellectual idea to actually practice? Okay. The whole thing behind Agile is you actually have the capacity or the capability to respond. It's not a theoretical exercise. And so how do you get there? It's part of what goes on, and this is why there's so many parts in the deciding phase, and this is really the next step of what we want to work on. So I'm not going to be addressing this aspect anymore today. It's where we call a lot of future work. So I need to step back and talk about what Joe's story is. We created this thought process, we created tools. We said, how the heck are we going to prove that this works? Or how are we going to show ourselves it works? So we ended up contriving a story, and it's a short story. It's Joe. Joe is the project leader on a fictitious company and program that is dealing with a legacy system, a very complex system, a legacy system that's been around for 15 years. And all of a sudden they're confronted with a rapidly changing market and a customer base that's decided to change how they want to receive this thing. And so a lot of what they've done in the past isn't going to work anymore. So how does he get his team going from just saying, hey, we've done it this way before, to actually starting to think about what they need to be doing in the future? Okay. And so, and one of the things we found is the creation of the story actually helps the assessment process. It speeds it up immensely. And the reason I'm bringing it up is it's worth the writing. It can be a page and a half or two. They're not long. That's why I said think short story. But without it, life is really, it also brings harmony to the group, because a single author isn't the only one that can weigh in on this. So I bring it up as one of those, I'll say, surprise artifacts that came out of our activity. So I'm going to change gears here a little bit and talk specifically about observation design. Each of the four spaces, what we had to do, okay, we were saying, okay, where do we want to look and what do we want to look for? So the where we want to look is each of those four spaces. What we want to look for is basically identified in terms of what we consider to be important, and it's basically represented by the ellipses that are shown in each of these spaces. Okay. And what we're looking is what's driving the variation and unpredictability and the changing environment in each one of these spaces. So what we did is, with a lot of debate and a lot of, there's a lot of knowledge that all of us have picked up, the three of us have picked up over time, and we're borrowing, using, and even all that stuff. And so what we ended up doing is basically declaring what was important to us for Joe's story in each of these areas. Okay, and the reason is because you don't have, none of us have unlimited resources. We do not have unlimited time to go look at everything. We don't have unlimited monitoring resources. You got to be able to figure out how you methodically determine what to focus on, and again, go for some directional correctness. Solution space is identified here. We stole shamelessly from you, Rick, in terms of the whole Agile system architecture. We did this. The only thing we added were some aspects around utility curves, because you need some way to characterize your system elements in a way that you can quickly make trade-offs. So these are the kind of things we put in there. In the product development space, this has got two. We are, again, and this is another area where it reflects integration with other work that's being done in the Agile Working Group. One of them is out of Rick's fundamental stuff. The other thing is the pattern work that Bill Schindell's been doing. Bill used different terms for his 4 systems, and we picked the different terms just because we have some cultural issues we're dealing with, but nonetheless, they're fundamentally the same. But again, these are the 4 that we felt like we needed to really support and focus on. So anyway, each of these spaces drove the creation of a set of questions. And then the organizational learning space here, we didn't spend any time, but we just know it needs to be addressed. Every successful company that has Agile somewhere in its nature, and the one that comes to mind right now is Toyota's product development system. They have an organizational learning space defined, okay? And it's very simple. And I think other successful companies do too. Most of us probably work for organizations where it's very haphazard. Most of the learning goes on in team meetings, and most of it's housed in everybody's brains. That's why we all panic when people leave, right? All we're saying is it's very important. If you're going to be Agile, if you don't have any memory of what you've done in the past, you have no heritage, and you're going to spend a lot of time relearning, and I don't know how you can be Agile without some intentional look at organizational learning. At any rate, this picture is borrowed. These aspects that are shown in the ellipses are borrowed straight from Senji's works of a learning organization. I haven't found anything better or simpler than what he came up with a number of years ago. And like I said, we haven't really spent too much time here. We just know that it exists, and no work is required. All right, so after we got through all that, we ended up having to create an assessment. And the assessment is based on a set of questions. And right now, I think we got like 30 to 40 questions. And if you go from left to right, what we did is we took 3 of the 4 observation spaces, and we reduced things down to what we thought was very important, down to 12 factors. Again, this is all about focusing. And we said we're really focused on, at this point in time, 3 characteristics around change rate, predictability, and volume, okay, which is the amount of variation. We put these questions into spreadsheets, and the questions are in a qualitative and a quantitative nature, and they're always multiple choice. And we picked this format because we had to have answers that we could map into basically some kind of a graphical representation for easy assimilation by a group of people in a group meeting. All right, so that's basically the thought process of how we came up with this. All So, I'll just stop here and talk about when we evaluated this, we used Joe's story. And in this story, I was Joe. I wrote the story, okay? Rocky Angier and Bob Epps, who are the other two people, one's in Philadelphia, Bob's in Philadelphia, Rock is in North Carolina. Rock is ex-IBMer in the IT world. Bob is Lockheed Martin, spent a lot of time in Lockheed Martin, and I'm out of Honeywell for aerospace. So we're not completely covered with everybody, but that's what we have, okay? So at any rate, once we define those questions for each of those observation spaces, we did a simulation. I wrote the story, and then we sat down, and we had 3 one-hour meetings to go through basically a facilitated question and answer phase. It took about an hour, sometimes an hour and 10 minutes. Rock and Bob were the facilitators, if you will, and I was Joe. So they would help me and ask questions, and I would give answers, and they would document my answers in the assessment field. Any places where we had ambiguity or whatever, we noted it and kind of squared it away later. Okay? Rock then took those answers and mapped them to the 3 phases that I'm going to show you here in a second. And so the whole effort, if you want to talk about the whole effort, took us about 12 to 16 hours maybe. Okay. And we were tweaking the questions and tweaking the methodology as we were learning what we were going on. So this is not an energy intensive exercise. So before I get into showing you what the results were, I need to talk a little bit about stability and predictability, because this grid shows up in a couple of places. It's really trying to understand how agile do you need to be. And one of the things that kept coming up over and over again is what kind of dynamic behavior are we experiencing in the environment? And so this is a very simple quad grid, if you will. Stability is on the vertical axis on the left. Predictability is on the horizontal axis. And there are 4 different quadrants, and I'm not going to read it all to you, but basically each one is described, and we use this description, if you will, to be able to map the answers that I was giving to the appropriate grid space. Okay. And then it provided a very easy way to be able to see what was going on. Okay. And so when you get done with all that, this is what you end up with. Okay. You end up with a grid, and in this particular case, let me talk a little bit about the coding over here. The coding is like over here that I'm circling around, the C and G and the GNR. Those are, the C and C is challenges, constraints. It came from the customer problem space. Those are goals and requirements. Okay. So these points are highlighted with the factors that came out of those observation spaces. Down here in the lower right, you see solution set, architecture, IF is interfaces. The red squares over there, the construction environment came out of the product development space and the integration environment. Okay. So basically what you have on the grid is a way to map those factors that we wanted to focus on, where they land in the grid with regard to stability and unpredictability. And based upon Joe's story and what kind of answers I gave, this is what you ended up seeing. Okay. And so just to give you an idea, and so just as a group, this is how you could review things as a group. Over here on the upper right, which is your really unpredictable, uncertain, unstable environment, the customer's challenges and constraints and their goals and requirements are really moving fast. They're changing quickly. And what are you going to do about it? Do you have to design your project differently to be able to deal with that? Have you got a monitoring system to even be able to detect when they change things? Or are you relying on something that was invented, this was a legacy system of 15 years. Are you relying on some way of doing things that is like 10 years old, and so nobody's keeping up with the pace of change? Okay? This is what this is supposed to do, is to show you what, where you ought to be looking at some kind of agile improvement if you don't have things. Or if you have a project design that can deal with it, you're okay. This just tells you what you're faced with. So, and again, it's real simple. The whole point of this is to reduce the stuff so that you can have a group conversation, be able to bring everybody's own perspectives and experiences into play quickly. All right? The response capability graph is really looking at variation. Okay? The whole thing is looking at how much variation have I got. So just to give you an idea of how this works, let me talk about the architecture. It's well, I'll talk about the support environment way up here at the upper right. If you look at it, it's showing up on the top line, which says there's 5. In this particular case, it says there's 5 different support environments, and they're all diverse. So, from a program point of view, okay, what this is a program where you have multiple customers, and they're all customizing the system. And not only that, they're being looked persnickety, and they're forcing their own requirements on support environments. So Joe is faced with a situation where he's got, in this case, 5 different support environments for fundamentally the same architecture. That's what's going on.
Product lines? Is that what you're kind of referring to?
It can be like product lines, okay? The question is, are you actually set up to run that way? Okay, and when one thing changes on one side, what happens to the other 4 instances? Okay, how coupled are they? I can tell you from my own experience that I worked in a company that was dealing with a situation like this, and they lived with this, and they all acknowledged that this existed, and there was never a mechanism put in place other than meetings to deal with what goes on between those. So all this is meant to do is, again, confront the group and what they're dealing with to try and get at some actionable changes. Okay. And then lastly, response time. This whole thing is, in this particular graph, is a little bit like Reinerson's Q diagram. Okay. It's basically your response. It's looking at lead time and time needed to effect a response, which actually wasn't included in this particular assessment. But what we're looking at is the factors that we were looking at, where do they land with regard to the rate of change and our ability to detect the rate of change and actually respond to it. And you can see in this particular example, the integration environment is too slow for what's going on and what's about ready to go on. And the goals and requirements actually is right on the cusp, and so it could be problematic based upon what's happening. Vista says we have a problem. Right out of the get-go, you have a problem. You have an integration environment that cannot keep up with the rate of change that you're expecting on this new opportunity. So what are you going to do? We experimented with what the capability, on the interface one down here, there's where the black dotted line is. We experimented a little bit saying, well, what can we do now versus what we need? And what this turned out to be was an offhanded experiment. But what it shows is how many of you have been through isolated improvements. Department XYZ wants to make an improvement on how they handle their interface requirements. And they say, yeah, we just cut our cycle time. Well, this shows you we just cut our cycle time, or time between changes down from 32 weeks down to 18. But in the whole scheme of things, tell me if it makes a difference. Is it actually going to make a difference? In this case, you haven't solved a critical problem, so it's not going to do a damn thing. You may have spent $1 million, but you got nothing for it. So at any rate, again, that's what these are about. So this is just a summary chart of the efficacy of the method we are at right at the moment. The values that I talked about early on are on the left, and what we've experienced so far is on the right. Okay, and I guess the singular point that I just want to bring out is we believe we have a set of tools, and our own experience says it was pretty quick to get through this. We were able to discern some very quickly some things and agree to them. At least start asking questions about them. Okay, very quickly with regard to being able to say, where might improvements be, or what problems are we going to have in the future. The other thing is that the assessment itself casts a broad net. We were looking at those three major observational spaces, and somebody may have a different set of factors. You know, if you're in a different industry, maybe your factors are slightly different. But nonetheless, it casts a broad net without getting to a question set that's 500 or 600 or whatever, which we talk to people that actually have created assessments for Agile that go up in that quantity. We're sitting at about 35 to 40. Okay. And that doesn't include, I had Rick's 10 questions on his RS group, so now we're up to 40 or 50. But either way, you do that, you still are way farther ahead than anybody else. So I think we're doing okay, but there's more work to be done, but so far so good. Bottom line is we think we have a workable prototype. And we're looking for early adopters. We may have two. One of them's out of MITRE, and one of them is actually working a tool company, part of INCOSE. But if you're interested in doing the prototype, what it entails is actually writing a story, going through the assessment, trying to use it with a team discussion, just try it, and then come back and we can help to facilitate if that's what's needed. But come back and brief, the three of us as to what's working, what's not, and early adopters are always free to make improvements, and see, hey, you really screwed up here. You got to change this or tweak this or whatever. But we are looking for early adopters because I think that's where they're at. Because again, where we're headed for is work products for INCOSE at large. Right? Next work phase is basically dealing with that whole area in the deciding activity of the OODA loop. There's a lot of work to be done there. This is also where a lot of integration is going to happen with other activities within INCOSE. I'll just leave it at that. Okay. Contact information for the three of us is on the slide. Phone numbers, emails. Please feel free to reach out.